And so talk to me about the different types of brain injuries that you usually see.
So there's several types of brain injuries that can happen in sports. That can be from scalp bruises to bleeding inside the brain would be kind of worst case scenario. And then a whole range of kind of in between. And one of the main ones we talk about is concussion.
And now, how can you sort of tell if someone has some sort of brain injury just by looking on the outside or symptoms that they may tell you?
Yeah, great question. So specifically when we look at concussion, we're looking at the athlete receiving a blow to the body that transmits to the brain or a blow to the head or neck area itself that can lead to injury in the brain. And so that can cause a number of symptoms. Most commonly it causes headache, but with the brain having so many functions for our lives, it can affect anything from sight, sound, sensitivity to noise, dizziness, blurry vision, or cognitive fog, just not thinking clearly, any sort of thing.
And how common are these brain injuries just as a whole?
Thankfully, not very common. We definitely see them both in the news, if we're sports fans, and motor vehicle accidents and the like, but usually it requires some sort of injury in order to have it happen.
And what is the most common kind that you would see? Would it be concussions, or do you tend to see a lot of other things as well?
Here in my clinic, being a sports physician, I see predominantly athlete-related concussions. So that definitely is the most common head injury I see here.
And how important is it to take these concussions, even if they may be minor, they may thought the hit wasn't as serious? How important is it to make sure that they're taken care of and they don't go back to any sort of physical activity before they're completely cleared?
Yeah, great question. So it's very important to have an evaluation by someone trained in concussions. So one, they can spot it. Two, differentiate, is this a more severe injury that we're dealing with so we can take care of that? And if it is a concussion, then helping get back to sport in the right time. The biggest concern I have when I'm evaluating athletes and getting them ready to go back to sport is we need to make sure everything is back to normal in the way it was. Because if they have another injury while they're still recovering, sometimes that leads to fatality.
And of course, with injuries like this, concussions can have probably a vary of timetable. If you give a timetable for possible recovery, is it important that they come back and make sure that they're okay before they go back, and not just wait till that timetable's up and then just go back on their own?
Absolutely. So thankfully, with a lot of the connections that we have with our high schools in the area and at the collegiate level, definitely, we have skilled athletic trainers that I work with specifically, that we can start the coordination of care here and have a lot of the recovery and return to play process accomplished at the school, but ultimately they do need to have some clearance.
And you mentioned possible fatality. Are there sort of long-term effects that can be sustained due to brain injuries?
So a one-time concussion does not typically cause lasting symptoms. But we do know with repeated concussions, and we don't know how many it takes or how severe of an injury necessarily has to happen, but with cumulative injury, definitely can cause some changes in the brain. And again, if we have a repeat concussion while we're healing from one, then that can cause very long-term effects.
I'm going to ask one too.
Mm-hmm.
Does one concussion increase your chances of having follow-ups? Does it make the brain, weaker is not the word, but does it make it more susceptible if you've had one and now maybe a lesser trauma would cause another one?
There's a small increase in risk if you've had one concussion that you'll have another one.
And now talk about the age groups that are more susceptible to these sort of brain injuries. Do you see a lot of older patients or younger patients? Is it more dangerous for specific age groups?
So concussion can happen at any age. Obviously, with the activity level of younger people, we tend to see them more. And definitely the adolescent group is kind of the highest risk, partially just with how active they are.
And now, has treatment and awareness for these over the years gotten better?
Yes, I definitely think the publicity and kind of understanding of the public has changed over the years, as well as how we treat them.
And are these injuries things that medicine will be able to fully catch up to and be able to treat, or are these things that time is mainly always just going to be the best healer for?
Ultimately, time. There's a lot of studies being done both for prevention and for recovery, and still a developing field. But accidents are always going to happen. We're always going to have brain injuries and need to help them through.
Are there ways that you sort of recommend to protect and prevent against these sort of things?
The two biggest areas we can prevent are related to technique in sport and equipment. Now there's plenty of research being done for devices and prevention that is still being studied. I would say the main thing right now is properly fitted equipment is the most important thing. And besides equipment, having good technique. In football, as an example, poor tackling technique dramatically increases the risk for a concussion. So if we can correct technique and make sure our athletes have a proper form in their sport, that will decrease the risk of concussion.
For these younger children, how detrimental can some of these brain injuries early on in life be for them?
Great question. So and I've said that a few times, with these kids, as they're developing in their brain, if we have a major traumatic event that can disrupt some of their growth. Definitely the younger the kid is, we want to decrease the risk of them having a concussion as much as possible.
And now, talk about what sort of leads to some of these injuries ending up being more on the fatal end. Is it just lack of knowledge and lack of care? Just talk about that.
The more significant concussions happen with higher velocity, so higher impact injuries. Those who have had a concussion before and have one again tend to take longer to recover or not fully recover. So we watch for amount of impact, amount of symptoms, and we take each patient individually as far as their course for recovery. But those who have had subsequent concussions, and especially if they're coming closer together or they're more severe each time, those are red flags that really we need to talk about retiring from sport to not have lasting effects.
Can you just walk us through the mechanics of a concussion? Like, sure. We hear it, but do people understand what physically is happening in the brain or in the skull? As best as you can, walk us through what actually happens on a concussion.
So a force to the body or the head and neck area that causes injury to the brain. If we were to do an MRI or a CAT scan of a concussion, it would look totally normal. It's more of a chemical reaction that occurs as a result of that impact. The way I describe it to my adolescent athletes is that their brain freaks out, and it takes a while for everything to settle back down.
And is that just like the brain rattling? Like physically moving around within the skull? Correct,
yes. So the brain rattles around inside the skull, maybe colliding with the skull, or we commonly find an injury where they have a blow to the back of the head, but they have impact in the back as well as then a hit to the front because the brain sloshes around, hits back, and then slides front.
And just wrapping up, is there anything else that you would like to add that you feel is important to add that I have not asked about?
It's important when you're coming back from sport that we complete a return to play protocol. It's required by state law as well as many institutions for different sports. But that's a stepwise process where we slowly advance activity to make sure we're not having any return of symptoms before we actually get them back to the court or the field.
The man's an expert.